All right, let's start this one off with a disclaimer. While this video is primarily about dealing with a Mopar, there are concepts in it that apply across the board. No matter what you're working with, you'll probably get something out of this. Some of it is really universal, like the dipstick of doom. It's not really doom, but it's a dipstick issue, a common dipstick issue that can get you in some trouble, and it really is universal. And we're going to get to that as we go along. So the overriding theme, anytime we do anything with this on this channel, the overriding theme is attention to detail, paying attention to detail. And nowhere in the world of automobiles is that more important than when you're dealing with the oil system of a big block Mopar. Now, big block Mopars, small block Mopars also have fantastic oiling systems. They have great pumps, they have great passages, they have big holes. The oiling systems themselves are awesome. But all of the Mopars that we deal with, the common Mopars, A bodies, B bodies, C bodies, D bodies, Imperials and stuff, FMJs, all of them have a common engineering, and I've done a video on this, specifically about this, but they have a common engineering feature that is rear steer, which means that all of the steering linkage is behind the K-frame, which means that these cars all have mid-sump oil pans. You Ford guys are like, you're lucky to have a mid-sump oil pan. Look where, I know we are. But then the Chevy guys laugh at all of us because it's like their oil pan's way back there and their sump is way back there. And all of the acceleration forces do nothing but put the oil where it's supposed to be. Those Chevy guys can run their engines down 2 quarts. They'll like the stock eliminator guys, they'll hit the starting line with like 3 quarts of oil in the engine because it's all going to the pump. Nothing gets wasted, nothing gets splashed around. We're not so lucky. So, now that we're in the home stretch of our, what do we call this thing? Mystery pole barn find 3D3, scrap pile revival. We're in the home stretch now, and the last thing we got to do is the oil pan. So, originally, the original oil pan on this thing is toast. The bottom of it was bashed in, it was dragged along, so it was all gouged and paper thin in places. It's no good. Now, I have a nice deep 8-quart pan with the pickup and all of that, and I was just going to throw that on here. And I said, no, that's not within the spirit of this build. The idea is to take everything that we got, freshen it up, fix it up, spruce it up, snazzy it up, and then put it back together again to see what it's going to do. And that doesn't include a really nice oil pan. So, did the next best thing, and I picked up, with another engine, I got this oil pan, which is just a generic Chinese chrome replacement oil pan. It's not a copy of any specific Mopar pan. It's got features of a bunch of different ones, but it's a 5-quart pan, and it has the typical baffling for high performance use. So we're going to use this. We're going to make this work. Now, this is not a high horsepower engine, but it is going into a light car with real deep gears. So it'll accelerate fairly hard, at least until it has to start pushing wind, and then power deficit takes over. But nevertheless, while it's pushing hard, that oil is all fighting to get to the back of the engine. When you're dealing with a 5-quart system in a mid-sump pan and a car that accelerates halfway hard, bottom 13s, high 12s like that, every single drop counts. Every drop counts. Nothing, and I mean nothing, has killed more Mopars than this mid-sump pan. And people either not giving it what it needs, when it was a deeper pan and all of that, or just not paying attention to details. So, boy, this was a really long-winded intro, but I had to cover all of that so that there's no questions as to where we're going with this. All right, so I found as I was putting this together that everything needed attention, right? You don't just take a pan like this, a pan in a pickup, and just randomly screw it into an engine and pull the pin and go. Because every step of the way we found deficiencies and weirdnesses and things that needed attention. So let's start with this. So it's not a very deep pan, as you can see. It's a 5-quart pan. And the fill level, when there's 5 quarts in here, the fill level is right here. If you see that seam, okay, from this baffle, fill level's right there, and it comes right about to here. So when this thing's got 5 quarts in it, the oil level is just here, okay? That's how far we got here, okay? That's it. That's the total depth. So the first thing we had here was our pickup. Now, when we put the pan on the engine with this pickup and started trying to determine its depth, we found that as this pickup was, this portion of it, this lip right here, was right up against the bottom of this baffle. So in other words, there was over an inch, inch and a half between the bottom of the pickup and the floor of the pan. Okay, that's not good. The pickup has to be in very close proximity to the bottom of the pan. In our case, I heated the tube, the pickup tube. I heated it and bent it here, bring it down. Then I heated it again and bent it here to straighten it out. And I had to actually do this a couple of times until I finally got the clearance that I wanted. Now, with this pan bolted in place, the bottom of the pickup is just touching the floor of the sump. Now, this is going to get a windage tray and another gasket, which will drop the height of this, will drop the pan. It would increase this distance by probably a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch, which is fine. This is designed to sit right up against the floor of the pan. You'll see there's a relief right here that allows oil to get in even if this is touching the bottom. So that was the first thing. With that pickup here, just underneath the baffle, all right, when you hit the gas, everything here heads to the back, right? All of it heads right to the back. This baffle helps keep some in there, but it's really not enough. You can see how much oil is over the top of it anyway, and as soon as you hit the gas, all of that oil is lost. And I guess it just stacks up at the back. So our pickup now sits on the floor of this thing. Now, another thing that we did here was we took this wrench and worked our way around the outside of this opening, or to the inside of this opening, so that the oil that's here has at least some barrier, something to keep it from heading back. You can only go so far with this concept, but when you hit the gas, like I said, everything above this baffle is going this way. And every drop you can keep in the sump is going to count. So that was one modification that we made. Now another one is, you can see this big opening right here. So this is the main drain back. Any oil that's sent to the back of the engine over here is going to drain back right along this passage. We've got this. I'm gonna bend this up and fit it a little bit better before we weld it in place. But this is gonna help keep the oil from jumping out of here. We'll have adequate opening at the front for the oil to, drain back. And we'll have adequate opening here for the oil to drain back. But I want to keep this big opening. I want to keep the oil from jumping out of this. You can lose a significant amount of oil on acceleration through an opening that big. So I can hinder it somewhat like this, and it'll still drain back adequately. So that's the plan as far as the actual sump itself and the pickup. And like I said, keeping as much oil as possible in the pickup where it's needed. The pickup only has to be at let's say 4 or 5, 6,000 RPM, at party speed. The pickup only has to be uncovered literally like for the blink of an eye, or suck in aerated oil just for the blink of an eye, and it'll spin a bearing. The vast majority of Chrysler big blocks you see that are wasted, it's always spun number 6 rod bearing. And the reason for that is because momentary oil starvation. The crank goes dry. As soon as the main bearings go dry, the rod bearings go dry. Number 6 is most affected by the main that feeds the rocker arms, the passages that are drilled down into the mains to feed the top end. Well, number 6 is most affected by that oil. So when pressure is lost just momentarily, that number 6 rod bearing goes dry and it spins. And you'll see the vast majority of wasted big block Mopars, it's always a spun number 6 rod bearing. All right, so that's the pickup, that's the pan, and here's the modifications we're making to optimize our baffling situation. Now we have a windage tray. So this grungy thing is a stock windage tray. This is the same for all of the HP motors, the 426 Hemi, they all use the same windage tray. Now the thing about these trays is that they work, but they're designed for general high performance and not really hardcore acceleration. So in other words, they're designed for passing gear, high speed runs, that sort of stuff. Not like, go, right? 160, 60 foot type of thing. They're not geared for that. They're not intended for that. So they have some deficiencies. What we have here is, this is number 7 and 8, this is 5 and 6, this is 3 and 4, and this is 1 and 2, as far as the rods go, okay? Now you see only 1 and 2 are dumping oil directly into the pan and thus into the sump. Number 3 and 4, and actually all of these, are dumping oil as the engine is running and the car is accelerating. They're dumping oil into this windage tray, and acceleration forces are taking it back. Now it does have drain back spots right there, okay, but those are only going to catch the oil that's slung off the rod, not the oil that just drips back down into on its way to the pan. So as you're accelerating, the oil that gathers here is all heading to the back and is joining the rest of this oil. It's all stacked up at the back of the engine. So what we did here was we took this tray and we cut this section of it out. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 are both depositing their oil directly into the sump. Again, every drop counts. Now you see we left this section right here. This is all going to get cleaned up, and this is actually going to get bent up a little bit before we're done. But I left this section because this is going to act as a crank scraper. Because as the oil is coming off the rods, it's coming off like on the form of ropes. So this will act as, not a true crank scraper, but it'll take the same basic effect of a crank scraper and cut those ropes and let them drain into the sump as well. So this is going to get us a significantly greater amount of volume directly deposited into the sump, whilst its ability to be a windage tray isn't compromised. So that's that. Clean this stuff. So that's all down. That's oil control to the best of our ability using relatively stock or replacement stock parts. The dipstick of doom. Okay, I gotta, all right. So, like the oil pan on this engine, the dipstick tube was toast. It was broken off in the block. So I've got this aftermarket, this universal aftermarket big block Mopar dipstick. You see I put a little white mark at full. All right, now watch this. Now push that all the way in. And we see that our white mark is right there on the pickup tube. Okay, so where it's saying we're full is actually right here when you put this all together. This mark right here is the true oil fill level at 5 quarts. So if you're going to use one of these dipsticks, a universal dipstick like that, keep in mind that when the factory put a dipstick in an engine and calibrated it where it's got to be, they were very specific as to which oil pan and where in the pan it's placed. These are universal. They took one and they copied. They're the people who make these things, who copy these things. They're not engineers. They just, okay, here's a dipstick, copy it, right? So they did. Those marks aren't even close. This is important to know if you're dealing with, let's say you buy a car that's got an aftermarket dipstick already. You can't trust the marks that are on there unless somebody actually etched them in themselves. Because you could pick up a car, an engine or a car that somebody else built with one of these dipsticks in it. They didn't bother checking, and when it's reading full, there's only 3 quarts in there. You're toasting that engine. So the dipstick of doom is a very real thing. You can't overlook any detail with this stuff. So what I'll do is, I won't mark the dipstick until after I've dumped the break-in oil. Because this way, I'll have my 5 quarts in there, my initial 5 quarts of oil in there, run the engine, the oil will circulate through the engine, it'll lay in whatever passages and gather wherever it's going to gather, and it's going to fill the filter. Then I'll dump that oil, put 5 quarts fresh in, then mark the stick. So this way I'll know what 5 quarts, true 5 quarts in the sump is. So little things like that, details like that, right? You don't even think about it, but all right, so that's it. Next up with this thing is just finish assembling it and drop it in the car and go to make smoke. And hopefully it makes more smoke off the tires than it does out the exhaust. But we'll find out when we get there. It is an experiment. Is it going to work? I don't know. We're going to find out. I have a hunch it's going to run pretty damn good, to tell you the truth, but we'll see. That's it, guys. Hope you got something out of that. I'll see you tomorrow.